Okay, so today we're diving into an absolutely incredible story. It's about a woman named Mary Beth O'Connor, and her journey, well, it has a destination so unbelievable, you really have to see how she got there. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. That one sentence from her memoir just perfectly sums up the wild contradiction that was her early life, right? Like, on one hand, you've got this honors student winning scholarships, and on the other, she's shooting meth daily. That duality is just so central to understanding everything that comes next. And to really grasp the scale of her transformation, just look at this. The then versus the now. I mean, it is about as stark a contrast as you can possibly imagine. We're not just talking about a comeback story here. No, this was a complete top-to-bottom reinvention of a life that was absolutely spiraling out of control. Okay, so the big question, right? How in the world does something like this even happen? How do you go from getting arrested for meth to being appointed a federal judge? It sounds impossible. Well, to even begin to understand it, we've got to go back and look at the roots of her addiction. And her story, it's such a powerful reminder that addiction, it doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's often not a simple choice, but more like a desperate adaptation. For her, drugs were literally a survival technique, a way to cope with a really painful childhood full of abuse and neglect. Alcohol was the gateway, sure, but that was just the very beginning of a much, much darker path. And that path led to a truly harrowing descent. We're not talking a slow slide here. This was an absolute free fall. So she describes that first injection of meth, and it gave her this incredibly powerful but totally deceptive feeling of control and euphoria. And think about it. In a life that felt completely out of control, that must have felt like everything. But it was all a false promise, a mirage of happiness that was about to consume her whole world. But despite that initial rush, the reality of an addict's life, yeah, it's anything but glamorous. Her entire world just shrank until it was all about one thing, and one thing only: getting and using more speed. And this obsession, it caused her to drop out of law school. Not once, but twice. She lost job after job, just digging herself deeper and deeper into this chaotic existence. So after years of this chaos just getting worse and worse, a huge confrontation with her partner, a guy she calls Doc in her book, that became the absolute, honest-to-God turning point. And Doc, he just lays down this brutal ultimatum. He makes it crystal clear, I'm not going to let your addiction destroy my life too. He was basically drawing a final line in the sand. So, with everything on the line, her relationship, her whole future, O'Connor plays the only card she has left. It was a question that came from pure desperation, but man, it was the question. The one that would change the entire trajectory of her life. And that one question kicks off a brand new journey. But listen, it was not some straight, easy line to sobriety. Not at all. In fact, her path to recovery turned out to be just as unconventional as the rest of her life had been. So she gets into rehab, and right away, she hits this massive roadblock. Pretty much everyone was telling her that recovery required a belief in a higher power. But for her, an avowed atheist, that was just a non-starter. There was no way she could just fake a belief that she simply didn't have. So what does she do? She starts searching for an alternative. And that's when she discovers this whole world of what's called secular recovery. It's an approach that's all about empowering the individual to take charge of their own healing instead of surrendering to something else. And this is where you can really see the huge difference in philosophy she found. On one side, you have the traditional 12-step mandate, which basically says, you are powerless, and if you don't accept that, you're doomed. But then there was this other group, Women for Sobriety, and their whole thing was, no, newly sober women need to be built up. They need to develop their own confidence and competency. For O'Connor, this was an absolute game changer. So instead of just following one single rigid path, she did something pretty radical. She built her own. She cherry-picked ideas from different programs, taking what actually worked for her. She used her own intellect, her analytical skills, to create a personal plan that was all about self-empowerment, not about surrender. And this personalized approach, well, it didn't just help her get sober. It allowed her to build an entirely new life, literally from the ground up. She actually has a name for this. She calls it Big R Recovery. And the idea is it's not just about abstaining from drugs, right? It's about a much deeper, holistic kind of healing. It's about addressing the whole person, the trauma, the pain, everything, and allowing them to finally reconnect with who they were always meant to be. And what came next is it's a stunning ascent. Look at this timeline. She gets out of rehab in 94. But she doesn't just stay sober. No, she re-enters and graduates from one of the best law schools in the country, Berkeley. Then she becomes a federal litigator. And finally, in 2014, she's appointed a federal judge. I mean, the timeline really does speak for itself. It's just incredible. So today, she uses this incredible platform she's earned to advocate for the idea that there are multiple pathways to recovery. She shares her story so openly, really to reassure other people that, hey, you can find your own way too. You can lead a fulfilling, amazing life. And this quote really captures such a vital point. For her, sobriety wasn't the finish line, it was the starting block. It was just the beginning of a whole new challenge, which was, okay, now what? How do I rebuild a life and actually fulfill all that potential that my addiction suppressed for so long? You know, her story leaves us with a really powerful final question to think about. In a world that loves to give us one-size-fits-all solutions for everything, her entire journey is just this incredible testament to the power of building your own path. And that's not just true for recovery, but for life.